Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us on this Wednesday afternoon in the fall. Looking forward to a discussion today with Zach here. Excited to kind of walk through what their journeys look like with data and analytics in the past few whiles. So, um, I'm Kevin Campbell. I'm the CEO of DTA Healthcare Solutions. We're a Twin Cities, Minnesota-based uh, data and analytics practice for healthcare. We do consulting, we do development, and then we have a product called Compendium that is a data catalog. It's a metric hub, and it's EDW automation software. And that's one of the ways we're interacting with Zach and CentraCare. So a couple logistical things before I kick it over to Zach to introduce himself. We don't have you guys aren't going to be able to jump in, but you can submit a Q&A, uh, submit a question through the Q&A function. So hopefully you can find that if you have a question, and we'll try to keep an eye on that as we're going and pepper Zach with hopefully as difficult a questions as we can. So anything that's hard, I'll obviously kick over to him. Other than that, I don't think I have any other logistics that I wrote down. So, uh, Zach, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about CentraCare as we get started here.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Well, Kevin, thank you so much to you and your team for organizing this today and giving us an opportunity to talk about all the things that we've been working on at CentraCare. I serve CentraCare as Vice President for Analytics and Transformation, and I've been doing that work for a little over 3 years now. But my career and background in healthcare has largely been in the operations space, leading inpatient departments or clinic-based outpatient departments. So my foray into data and analytics is relatively new. Maybe I'm prefacing that because as you pepper me with those difficult questions, if you're looking for an IT or a technical wizard, we'll direct those questions to Kevin. Um, and I'll let you down with my responses to those things today. But I hope what you'll learn in this is more about the adaptive change, the structural decisions and components that we found have been necessary to really make progress. And I hope you'll see that if an operator like myself can learn some of this, then regardless of your background, I think you can as well. So that's a little bit about myself. But I want to also tell you a little bit about CentraCare and the size of our organization and some details about it. So CentraCare is a healthcare system uh, based out of central Minnesota. We really provide the life-saving care between the Twin Cities and the Dakotas. We cover a large geography. We have 10 hospitals, 30 plus clinics, over 100 different outreach locations, and we have a med school that will be launching relatively soon. Um, we care for a patient population of about 800,000 people in our primary and secondary service area. And on any given year, we see almost 350,000 unique patients. We play a really, really important role in rural healthcare, especially rural healthcare in Minnesota. As an organization, we have almost 12,000 employees that are really the strength of our organization, and our employees are what makes us special. We're about 2 billion in total revenue, which is a pretty good size health system. Certainly in our state, you'll find some that are bigger and you'll find many that are smaller. But that's a little bit about CentraCare, and maybe that gives you a little background as we talk about what we've been working on. So,
Awesome. Thanks for that, Zach. Appreciate that. There's a little bit of a preamble here that we'll go through, and then we'll get into some brass tacks about how Zach and his team have really pushed this forward. So first, we'll talk a little bit about what caused the problem. What was the issue that was identified? So they were struggling, tons of data and not getting good answers from that, or not getting good answers quick enough was one of the things um, that they had found, and I'm sure a lot of you can resonate with that. We see that a lot in our work. We see, almost all healthcare organizations, honestly, are dealing with a ton of data. There's a huge amount of information that is gathered, in the medical record system and ERP systems and other systems. But how do we actually turn that into useful data? So uh, that can lead to backlogs of requests and people who aren't getting what they need, and there's obviously a lot of frustration around that. And one approach is to throw a ton of money at it, and but not, it's healthcare, right? So we don't have a ton of money to throw at this problem, and frankly, that doesn't solve the problems anyway if you don't deal with the foundation. So Zach, tell us a little bit about what brought your organization, because some of this obviously predated, the position that you're in. What
Mhm.
brought your organization to realizing something needed to change?
Yeah, so I'd say around 2021, we knew we needed to do something different. And we felt like we had this great asset. We had so much data, whether it was from our electronic medical record or from our ERP system or from all different sets of source systems. And yet it seems so difficult to get answers to the things that we were looking for. And I think we had a desire and an appetite to be answering questions um, based on what we knew from the data as opposed to what we thought or we felt. Not that that's not an important element, but I think you can round it out with what do you know from your data. And we had a hard time doing that. And eventually we hit rock bottom in terms of really wanting to do something different and making progress. And when I say rock bottom, I'm referring to as an organization, we hit that point of, okay, let's do the hard work and let's do something different. Meanwhile, the staff, the developers, the analysts, they continue to do great work in 2021, in 2022, and 2023, and so on. They've always done great work and they continue to do great work. But I think as an organization, just realized we need to support our clinicians and our leaders with a different solution, and we need to support our analysts and our developers and our architects and all those folks with a system that brings joy to their work as well. So at the time, we had over 300 requests in a backlog that in all reality we'd probably never get to. To make matters worse, that backlog was growing by over 20 requests a month. So every month that went by, it just got worse and worse. That led to frustration by our customers. That led to frustration by the staff that work in analytics and data architecture, etc. Because that's an awful lot of pressure to put on a team like that when they're doing the best that they can. And we had thousands of existing data assets. And Kevin, I think you'll show the group just how many. But if you recall from a couple slides ago, I mentioned we had almost 12,000 employees. Well, that's about how many data assets we had as well. And as an organization, if you just put that into perspective, does each employee in an organization need their own report? I don't think so. I think that feels like overkill because there's got to be some information that could be shared by employees. But yet that was our reality. Um, and so we were report rich, but we really weren't delivering the insights that we wanted to. And we were paying licensing fees and costs to run systems that we no longer needed or that were duplicative of another system. And so we needed to migrate to do something better there and better utilize our dollars. So that was sort of where we were at.
Yeah, and as Zach alluded to, I have a couple slides here to try to, you know, get your head around a number like 12,000 when it comes to things like reports is pretty challenging. That number comes from the amount of crystal reports, which is just one type of report that CentraCare had, and this is from a few years ago. Um, you know, how many of those assets do they have out there? And it was about 12,000 that they had. Now there were a lot of reasons for that. CentraCare has several affiliates that utilize their Epic system, and so they get maybe copies of those reports. So there's a lot of reasons behind that, but still, when you have that many assets, there's a cost to that, to maintaining all of that when you go through upgrades and things like that. Um, so this was just kind of an interesting number to look at, and this is a screenshot of what it looked like in Compendium, just looking for, what are all my crystal reports that are out there, and they have other types of reports as well. So, but what is that? Just humor me for a few slides here. I made kind of a visualization of what that might look like. So this is a report. Each report, a developer can spend anywhere from 8 hours to probably 80 hours, depending on the complexity of the report. So CentraCare has been developing these reports for many years, and that's a lot of effort went into each of those. They each had a valid need for being created. Um, but then when you start to multiply that out, so this is what 100 reports looks like. And then from there, this is what 1,000 reports looks like. And again, you think of each of these and the amount of work that goes into maybe updating them uh, or enhancing them, or just maintaining the systems around them. And then this is 12,000. So you can kind of squint and you can barely see a single report anymore at this point. So that's that's my little visual to help you understand what it was that they were looking at, and still in many ways is. There's still a lot that's being done. There's been a pretty significant migration effort in the last few years from Crystal to Microsoft Power BI that we're not going to get into today, but that's helped consolidate a lot of these and reduce a lot of these based on usage, and tracking those things in Compendium helps us understand um, where we can consolidate and get rid of some reports that aren't used. So what happened, as Zach teed us up here, they started making some bold decisions and make some big changes. And so today, this might be a little bit uh, exaggerated, but um, I think in a lot of ways they've found this, and we'll get into. Zach will talk a lot about how they got here. In general, they're able to find more accurate insights. They don't have to submit a request to find out if a report exists. That's a huge amount of effort to submit a request. They might start building it without knowing that report exists. But they can really get their arms around what they have in order to move things forward and improve from there. So, and hopefully the developers, the analysts, the architects are spending less time reinventing any wheels. I'm sure there's the occasional wheel that gets reinvented in a complex system like this, but that's the goal, is to heavily reduce that. So Zach, tell us. We've got a few points here on some key things that your organization has done, but tell us how you've moved this forward.
Yeah, like you said, I think we're in a much better position today than we were just a couple of years ago. Now, are there exceptions to that? Of course. I mean, we're not perfect, and we're on a journey, and we'll learn from the mistakes and the opportunities that we identify, and we'll continue to get better. But I'll give you, 10 elements that we did to really get there. So, like any good webinar presentation, you have 5 things or 10 things. This is going to be 10 things, but it'll be pretty painless. But I hope these are 10 things that you could think about in your organization. And certainly our work with Kevin and team around report migration and Compendium have been really critical to all this as well. So the first thing was elevating analytics across the organization. So we went from a space where multiple leaders owned multiple parts of the analytics wheel. Our colleagues in IT owned a part, our colleagues in quality owned a part, our colleagues in other areas owned a part. And that created a lot of challenges and a lot of confusion. So we established a leader, which led to the position that I serve in today. We centralized our resources, our analysts and our developers and our team members that do the great work to produce the products for our customers. We didn't completely centralize every single resource in the organization, but I would say we largely centralized the majority of our resources. In doing that, we really recognized the talent that we had. I mean, we just have incredibly smart individuals um, who write reports and develop insights for customers and do analysis. And we are lucky that we have that talent and we recognize that talent. We set bold goals. So our goal that we set out to accomplish, our overarching goal was to be a national leader in healthcare for data and analytics, um, which is a bold goal, but I can a little bit later talk about how we measure our progress towards that goal. And then maybe most importantly, we committed to having a data-driven culture. So we committed to going from making decisions because we thought or we felt one way to balancing that out to say, here's what we know with data. And that was going to round out how we make decisions about how we best serve the patients in our community. So let's go to the next point, number 2.
Well, before we get to that, I had a
Yeah,
question. So um, this is the after, right? This is what
yep.
the organization looks like now. Was there tell us a little bit about you mentioned centralizing resources. What types of resources was that? Was it, I assume, generally analysts or I say I
Yeah,
assume, no, but I have to ask the
yeah, let's
question.
talk about that a little bit. So in the original state, we had analysts with different subject matter expertise residing in different pockets of the organization. Again, doing great work, but given they all resided in different silos, right, there were certainly uh, differences and variability in how we approached the process, how the output looked, how we engaged our customers, how we received requests, and how we managed those requests. And our report developers were in a similar place. And so those are largely the resources that we centralized. We have gone through different iterations of a leadership structure. There's probably no perfect structure, and it's something that sort of evolves with you as an organization during your journey. But what Kevin has up on the screen here is our current state, um, where we have a director of analytics and data governance that does fantastic work, and she's done a great job recruiting uh, 2 outstanding managers that have expertise in the analytics space, and in your SQL, your report writing, your technical space, and together they make a really wonderful duo to best support our analysts, developers, and translators. And that's really the role of our leadership team, is to support that team in delivering the best products that we can for our customers. I'd be happy to chat with anyone offline around how the structure has evolved, the pros and cons that we experienced. Again, I don't think there's any one right answer, but this is where we sit today. So,
And can you real quickly just mention what the transformation management piece is? Is it completely separate? How does it play
yeah.
in?
So the other hat that I wear is I lead our transformation management team. Transformation sort of a buzzword, but I think it's half strategy and half operations. Maybe it bridges that gap that organizations experience where the strategy is great, but it feels like there's not quite enough there where it's actionable for your operators to do something with, or the operators are so busy with the day to day that maybe they don't have time to spend thinking about what would we do differently if we were going to really step back and do this a completely different way. So we bridge that gap. And I would say the transformation team that I serve is a frequent customer of the analytics team, and we work together really well.
Awesome.
All right, so number two, we implemented a data catalog, and we evaluated all sorts of different options in the market. But really, a data catalog is foundation to a data governance practice, which is critical to have a high performing analytics program. I believe that adaptive change and leading our teams can't solely be solved with a technical change or a technology. And so I won't tell you that a data catalog alone fixes everything, because it's a tool. It's a very important tool, but it's not key to everything. But we strongly believe that it is foundational, and it is a very critical tool that you pair with the adaptive change that you lead within an organization in the space. So after searching and researching all the different tools, we landed on Compendium, the product that Kevin and team have developed and have available in the market. I think the value is incredible. I feel like we pay for the services and the functionality in that tool that we use and that we need, and we're not paying for things that we'll never use as an organization. And maybe the most important thing is that we've really found a partner that's worked with us on not only the implementation, but the future enhancements that would really be critical to our success. I don't feel like I have a meeting with a regional manager for some market where I pour my heart out to all the things we'd want change, and then they save it in their OneNote and they never look at it again, and I just get disappointed quarter after quarter when something doesn't change. We really have a partner that has worked with us to make this as good of a tool as possible, and that's brought us a long way.
Thanks for that. I didn't bribe you for any of that, so much appreciated.
That's
Love
right.
working with you guys. So next, you
Uh,
guys, metrics were a key thing that you've been focusing on, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, part of what we had to do when we realized we had a pretty significant backlog and we had a greater deficit growing every single month is we had to get focused and we had to prioritize. And before even worrying about how we might visualize those things in a dashboard, we had to really focus on the metrics themselves, and have trust in their accuracy, get clear about what the definition is, get clear about sort of who owns the metric, not using multiple definitions for the same thing within an organization that creates this dynamic of someone did something wrong because this is what I see. I mean, we had to clear up all that extra work and confusion. And that's been a key component of leveraging our data catalog as well, where it is our system to store that data and metadata around definitions, around coding, around everything that is required in order to pull this together. And we chose to organize our work around our strategic plan. And a little bit later, I'll talk about how our teams are organized. But we're organized in a way that helps the organization accomplish the strategic plan that we put in place, because ultimately that's where we're going to serve our patients and our customers. So.
Yeah, and I just throw in here that when we are working with clients on how to get started in data governance, it's such a, we think of enterprise data governance and all the data and all the analytics and all the data movement. It's extremely overwhelming, and I'm sure a lot of you on the call here can resonate with that. We usually advise that people start with metrics. it really is, pick a strategic or executive dashboard to start with. It's already got a lot of eyeballs. People care about it. Those are two important things when it comes to data governance. If you're trying to govern things that, only a couple people care about, it's very hard to make any progress or feel like you're making any progress. But if you go after metrics, you're going to have those hard conversations. You're going to have, real meaningful discussions around some of these things, and that's important. And as Zach said, the the technology, having a technology like we call it a metric hub where all the metrics sit, it's not going to fix everything, but you also need to have somewhere to put these things. If you're just defining metrics and they're going into a spreadsheet and or, getting put on a shelf, that's not helpful either. So it's really a both and. But metrics are a great place to start if you're looking for how do we get our data governance program off the ground. Just real quick, some just screenshots of the metric hub at CentraCare. Is some of the metrics. They have a lot of them. Obviously, these are just a few of them, but just to get an idea of what it looks like to have them cataloged. And then each of those metrics have metadata around them, important things like inclusion logic, calculation logic, who developed it, or who's the developer on that metric, more the technical person who's creating the metric, who are the subject matter experts, where does it come from, categorization, stuff like that. Those are things that are all key to having a place that everybody can get to and they can see how is this calculated, where does it come from, all of those questions. And then from there, and this is scrubbed somewhat, but this is just a snapshot of what their dashboard looks like that then pulls these metrics together from the metric hub into dashboard. And as they add metrics to that, they're easy to plop in going forward. So, and the other benefit is making sure that if you're having metrics, the same metric on multiple dashboards, which you're going to, making sure that if you update a metric definition, if you update the logic, you don't have to go into each dashboard and make sure that metric logic lines up. So a metric hub can really help you define it once in one place, and then it goes out to all the places that it gets reported on.
Yeah, it creates a lot of efficiencies, and I think if any of you are listening to this right now and you find yourself with your teams or in your organization saying, well, does anyone know which developer might have worked on that report in the past? And you're needing to kind of get everyone together to have that conversation. And then you find out maybe that individual was promoted and is in a different role now, and you can't even speak to them about what they did, and you're searching through files and you don't know if you have the latest and greatest. This is really what you need. This is what prevents a lot of that wasted time and rework. Or if you find yourself saying, well, who was the subject matter expert that helped us build that report? And oh my, it was this person, but now they're not at our organization anymore. So now who do we work with? I mean, this is how you quickly get those answers and prevent all that wasted time and effort.
Yeah, good point.
So the next thing that we did, it seems simple, but we shared data about our data. So we looked in the mirror and said, if we're going to answer data questions that all of our customers send to us and serve them in that way, we should be able to use data to talk about our own work and about the wins that we're having and about the challenges that we still face. And so we needed to tell the story and use data to make the story impactful and real. And so we helped our organization understand how many requests were coming in each month and how much time did it take to fulfill those requests and how many data assets, whether it's a report or a dashboard or something else, already existed, so that we could really start to change the narrative that really what we don't need is more reports. We've got a large quantity that Not only did someone have to build, but each of those has some technical debt that's required to maintain those and make them reliable. And then we needed to get out of that cycle. And so we measured our turnaround time, we measured our request deficit, and we measured our customer experience so that we know we're doing the best that we can to serve our customers. And then we showed them how to use Compendium, our data catalog, to get the information that they needed so that they weren't relying on email, a Teams chat, a phone call, or just who they knew in order to say, hey, do you know if we have a report around length of stay? I mean, while we'd be happy to answer those questions, not everyone knows who to contact with that question. And any email exchange like that can take time, as all of you know. And we just believe there was a better way to do it, and our data catalog is that better way for us.
Well, and as I mentioned before, we see it all the time that ServiceNow tickets become the way to find out what exists out there, and that's not the most efficient way to find out that information.
Exactly. So next we opened up access to our data, and so we had to challenge our thinking internally to gain a different level of comfort with having greater access to data in general, to data catalog, and to different types of data so that things were more accessible for self-service functionality, but at the same time we were providing greater transparency for our clinicians and our team members. And so our data catalog allows our customers to do a basic search functionality that they probably do every single day in their work lives and in their personal lives. And quickly they can understand what are the underlying definitions, what are the metrics that drive a particular report, or even if a report exists today. Now, do 100% of our team members know to leverage this solution? Not yet, and we'll have to continue to get better at that. But I continue to be really pleased with and impressed by how many people know to go to that source, and our data catalog is really becoming our front door to access all things data, and we'll continue to move in that direction.
As far as the data itself, have you made changes around how you approach who should have access to what data? You kind of have organizations that I think take a very tight approach to that, where they're really only going to allow people to have data if they really describe the need and really kind of defend it. And then you've got organizations that probably are a little too lax, that don't really have a lot of management of access to the data itself. Do you guys have a philosophy around who should have access to what data and how you approach that?
Yeah, I think we still have some improvements that we can make, but I'd say we're somewhere in the middle. Certainly healthcare is complicated by the fact that we have very sensitive data in our source systems, PHI that is really protected, and we have to do our proper due diligence, making sure that we protect that data and we don't disrupt the trust that we have with our patients around that information. But so often I hear from leaders saying, well, what can we learn from a department that's doing well? And someone will always say that, well, someone must have the answer to it. What can we learn from this department that's figured out how to have fewer falls, as an example? Well, it becomes a lot easier if you trust your leaders to have access to a broader set of fall data across the whole enterprise, because then they can see who's doing well. And then maybe that can spur them to go have a conversation with somebody who's figured it out. Or another big change for us was data around things like turnover and vacancy rates across We went from being uh, very siloed, where you could only see the little bit of information that pertained directly to your area, and that limited us in developing the broader insights around where we have opportunities to reduce turnover and what areas we could learn from.
Great. Yeah, those are great examples. Speaking of silos,
Yeah, so there were all sorts of silos that had formed over many years, and a lot of times silos are formed for a particular reason or even a good reason. But we've had to be really intentional to break down silos, create greater transparency of data across clinical areas, across operating units, across different functions. Um, and we will, I'm sure, work on this until the end of time. But this work has allowed us to gain deeper insights that help us better identify solutions to problems that exist. Um, and it's helped our teams see the bigger picture of what people are working on, and that allows them to better serve customers.
awesome.
This particular one I'm passionate about, but we welcome mistakes, and mistakes are gold. They are opportunities to do something different, to improve a process, to do something better, that ultimately allows us in analytics to better serve the clinicians and leaders that we support, which allows them to better serve our patients. And so we had to really redefine how we treat those mistakes and our appetite for welcoming them and treating them as gold. This is very complex work, as all of you know. Um, just the littlest miss or misstep in a process can lead to very different outcomes, which can cause challenges or issues. Um, and to err is human. I think we all know that we will make mistakes. It's natural, and many times it's the systems and processes around the individual that actually contributed to the mistake. And so by welcoming mistakes, I think that gives us an opportunity to really investigate how and why did that happen, and then what can we change about the process and the system to prevent those types of things in the future, which I think better supports and serves the really talented individuals who work on in this complex world every single day.
Right. And we have a little screenshot there of an article that you helped us with a while back, where we talked about how this idea of welcoming mistakes, I mean, really comes from, it has a corollary, at least in the whole just culture um, concept within patient safety. And you know,
Right.
if you have a culture that punishes mistakes, then you're going to have a culture that is actually going to end up having more mistakes because you're not elevating things before they happen, or you know, people are hoping that their mistake doesn't come to light, and you're not fixing those processes and systems to make your health system safer. And the same thing goes for obviously it's less about, you know, patient safety, life and death, fortunately, but still, you know, when you have people who are working in data and analytics, if they don't, if they're worried about being punished for mistakes, whether it's mistakes in code or what have you, they're going to be a lot less likely to share. They're going to hold close their stuff and not want other people to see it, have it be transparent in something like a data catalog. And that's why that's a big reason we have such silos in healthcare, in analytics groups. I think because of that, we're all, you know, we don't want to get shown up. We don't want to be exposed. And if we can foster an environment that's like that just culture concept in patient safety, hopefully we can we can eliminate a lot of those anti-sharing uh, um, instincts. So I'd recommend you hop out to
Absolutely.
our website and read more about that one.
Yeah, and I'd be happy to chat with people offline too if you want to learn more or have a conversation about this. But mistakes over time too really take a toll on the individual, and I'm reminded every single day that I don't think anyone's harder on our team members in data and analytics than they are on themselves. I mean, they really, really want to do great work, and they do great work. Um, but when the systems or the processes that we have in place create an environment that might lead to errors and mistakes, those over time can take a toll on individuals, and I just don't think that's fair. And
Right.
so we need to support people in a different way.
Well said.
Maybe that leads us to this point, Kevin, which is, uh, we've really invested in our people. Um, in CentraCare, our greatest asset is our people, no doubt. Those people are at the bedside or in the OR or in the clinic with patients every single day. And what they do is what makes our care special and our experience special. And in data and analytics, our greatest asset by far is our people. Uh, no offense to Compendium. It's a great tool, right, Kevin? And we've talked about all the great things it does. And that's a really important asset for us as well. But ultimately, it's our people. And so we've invested in our team members in a number of different ways. Um, and we need to continue to find new ways to invest in our people. We still have opportunity, but now we have dedicated time every single week for skill development. We have invested in training resources to help our team members learn new skills and become proficient or gain a level of expertise in something new, maybe something that they have a passion around. And then myself and my dyad partner, we try to meet with every employee at least quarterly to hear how things are going and hear how we can better support them. And I really think this has paid off. Not that we have it all figured out, there's certainly more we need to do, but this has been really critical for us.
Nice. And then outside of your group, you've been working on enhancing partnerships as well.
Yeah, I'd say early on in this journey, we had a process where it was really our job to determine what was a priority and say, this is what we're going to work on. And then, unfortunately, here's what we won't be able to get to because of capacity, and we have to say no to all sorts of things. The problem with that is, despite our best intentions, or despite everything I tried to do to understand what's a priority across the whole organization, I mean, I can't possibly know what's the top priorities for our safety and quality teams as well as the leaders for safety and quality know them. Or I can't possibly understand what's most important for Redwood Falls Hospital as well as our president at Redwood Falls or the leaders that are on that leadership team. And so we wanted to really design something different where we have a partnership with the clinical teams and with the business teams, and we really partner with them and they tell us what's of highest priority so that we know we're working on the right things that will best support the mission and the goals that they're working on.
Awesome. And along those lines, you've got uh, structure that supports these partnerships. Talk a little bit about those product teams and how that enhances those partnerships and relationships with the business.
Yeah, be happy to. So we have 6 different product teams, and these are largely organized around our strategic plan, but then each of these product teams has a clinical or business leader that serves as the owner. for the team, and their responsibility is to really prioritize for the team so that we make sure we're working on what's most important. So our automation product team is focused on automating all the manual reporting that might still exist in our world that could be taking place across any of the other product teams that you see to the right of it. But by doing that and strategically focusing on that, that frees up capacity of those other 5 product teams so that they have more capacity to better serve those strategic priorities. A strategic area for us as an organization is workforce, safety and quality, population health, and then creating greater patient access, whether that's on the inpatient setting or outpatient setting. So then we've aligned our data teams around that. And again, they're partnered with a product owner who's a senior leader in that space and can really provide good direction around where we should be focusing.
That's great. And this is a model that that we always recommend, something along these lines, whether you call it product teams or service line teams or however it makes sense to organize those. You have, these analysts, developers, translators, they're all in the same department. So they're in Zach's department. So there's the cross training, coverage and all the things that you need so that people aren't out on an island by themselves supporting a single strategic initiative. So all of those folks work together, but they're assigned to these product teams. And this approach can really be a great way to have an organization say, okay, we're going to decide annually what our key priorities are, and they will often be the same from year to year, but it's a way to be able to say, here's a stake in the ground that we're going to really focus on these aspects, as opposed to trying to take all requests and try to categorize them and things like that. That's really difficult. You obviously still have to manage the things that fall outside of these product teams, and that happens. But it does allow a data and analytics team to be a little bit more focused instead of all over the place. And unfortunately, and with constrained resources, we do have to make decisions about where we spend our time. And this is at least a way that is clear to everybody what the top priorities are, and then other things still get taken care of, but on potentially a different thread.
Yeah, and I think it aligns expertise in the right areas. So one might say, well, why wouldn't you just have these data teams report to the inpatient leader then, right, that runs your
Mm-hmm.
hospital? And I would say those individuals have all sorts of challenges and issues that they need to manage on a day-to-day basis. And SQL troubleshooting is probably not high on their list or a skill set that they have. And so it
Right.
would be very unfair for me to request that those teams report to them and that they help them troubleshoot. So this
Right.
is a good mix where that inpatient leader can provide input on what are the highest priorities and signing off on the final product that it meets the needs of the customers. But we still have the analytics and technical support underneath that can help our analysts and developers and translators learn and grow and troubleshoot. And so I think it is a good model that we didn't start with, but we've landed here after a couple of years, and I think we're better for it.
Yeah. And just one more thought on that is I really see this as if you've got the extremes of um, a centralized data and analytics function that just every ticket that comes in gets distributed to whoever's available. And then the other extreme is uh, every department that has enough finances, has enough budget, has their own person to go to or people to go to. This is really um, a nice middle ground for that because you have consistent people. Your team is consistent.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, they have names and faces, and you get to have meetings with them and help prioritize their work to a certain extent. But you also get, as I mentioned before, that team mentality with the technical team, the cross training, the support, and all of those things. So it's a great model. How does the maybe quickly say how the analytics steering committee, what kinds of things do they tackle?
Yeah. So we have both an analytics steering committee, and we have another committee that operates more at the operational level, and both of those committees are key to our data governance structure. But our analytics steering committee is going to make strategic decisions about the direction of our analytics program, and they're going to make sort of high-level governance decisions when we need to make them. And that might be, what's our philosophy around who can have access to certain HR data, and how transparent are we across different business lines with that information. It's those types of data governance questions that we would tee up for our analytics steering committee, where we'd have some really robust discussion and then make a well-informed decision.
Excellent. And as promised, we have point number 10. Zach did not
That's
lie.
we've arrived here. So point number 10, we created a culture around data, and I see it in action almost every day, which is really pretty fun to witness. But our leaders are hungry for data. And one way we saw that and measured it is the number of requests that came in as we launched our Center for Analytics certainly increased, which was both a good and a bad problem. But our leaders use the information, and we expect to see it now. And so as I sit in meetings where operational or strategic decisions are being made, I see very few decisions going forward unless adequate data accompanied whatever the recommendation was, and leaders felt like they had a really robust understanding of what was needed. And that has really been impactful for us as an organization. And the compendium, our data catalog, has really been a critical tool and a key asset in doing that as well.
You talked earlier about the training you make available to your folks, the helping them develop their skills. When it comes to leaders across the organization and really trying to help this culture get built in, do you have training opportunities, or I don't know what you want to call it, but opportunities to kind of get in front of them to try to increase, we hear the buzzword data literacy.
Yeah,
What ways do you engage people outside of your department with this?
we have some opportunities today, um, but to be completely transparent, I think that's really the next avenue that we're going to be leaning into. And I think to advance our program and to keep supporting our clinicians and our leaders, that's going to be the next strategic area of focus for us. How do we provide greater data literacy training? How do we find super users in different areas where we can grow their skills and expertise so that they can do more through a self-serve model and not rely on our teams necessarily to do all of that work for them? And so we're going to be leaning into that a lot the rest of this fiscal year. And Kevin, maybe you'll have me back someday and we can talk about our work in that space.
Perfect. And I have heard, I know Regina's talked about getting in front of, there's a group of operational leaders, and I know it's often a full agenda, but I know that things like what is this data catalog has been one of those things, but I'm sure you guys have gone over your strategic goals dashboard in that venue and things like that as well. Does that sound like I
Yeah,
get
there's
it?
definitely been some efforts like that. Regina, who's really talented director on our analytics leadership team, she's done a very nice job educating leaders on here's compendium, here's how you can use it, here's where you go to find it. Here's who you reach out to if you have questions. We've done great training on how to view the linked strategic goals that we make available to all levels of the organization in our Power BI visualization tool. I think there's definitely efforts like that we've done that have paid off, and there's a lot of opportunity ahead. So,
Awesome. So
yeah, maybe to
it's the
wrap us up
result.
here,
Yeah.
maybe I can just brag a little bit on behalf of the team who's really done all the work to accomplish these milestones. But in really short order, in 12 months, our analytics maturity score of our program grew by 2 points. And 2 points might not sound like a lot, but on a 7 point scale, when you're starting at roughly a 2 and you jump to a 4, I think that's a pretty big deal. And we worked with our partners at the Chartist Group to do that. I think this will be the overall metric that we use to evaluate the maturity of our program as we work to become a national leader. Our monthly deficit we've cut in half, but breaking news as of September's data, we actually had erased the deficit altogether for that month.
Wow.
So we continue to make really good progress there, which is pretty cool. And our team engagement scores have exceeded national averages and our organization's performance, which is an important metric that I like to focus on and think it's critical. And we are able to do that despite making all the changes that were mentioned before. So we moved a lot of cheese and yet have been able to have high engagement scores, which is really important. So.
Yeah, congratulations. It's really good work. One bit of warning is what we've seen is the better you get at responding to requests, the more confident the organization becomes in you, and often they start bringing those requests that they maybe have not brought forward. So, which is a good thing. There's always more that your leaders are wishing they had in order to do their job, and so the more efficient you get with those things, and the better your meeting needs. It will bring more in, but that's a good thing.
Yeah, yeah, I'm quite certain that the reward for this will be more work in some ways or more complex work. But I think we're craving to do that more complex work. It's great when we can meet a user's needs by a report that has counts and percentages and some of those elements, but we love the challenge of trying to help a leader think through the relationship between different things or blending data from different source systems to answer a question. That's the work ahead that we really want to do. So.
Well, look at that. We're just a minute before the hour. It's almost like we planned it that way. Hopefully, and thank you to those of you who submitted questions throughout. Hopefully, you heard your questions get peppered in there as we were talking. But if anything didn't get answered, or if you have other questions, you'll see our contact info here. Zach, thanks so much for being part of this. I really appreciate it. This was a great discussion. And again, congratulations for all the good work you've been doing there at CentraCare.
Well, thanks, Kevin. We appreciate your partnership and I appreciate everyone joining today.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good rest of your day. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.